Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining another episode of the Product Management Learning Series, a series of live streaming events where industry thought leaders and product practitioners share their PM career journeys as well as lessons learned along the journey to inspire current and aspiring product builders like you to level up your product career. We recently started a very special series featuring product leaders from leading generative AI companies. Please join us to explore the challenges and opportunities of this very transformative technology paradigm shift and gain insights from those leading the charge in the generative AI product development space. So please make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, which you can find the link in the events details tab to receive key takeaways and recaps from today's conversation and for future event updates. So today with me, I have a very, very special guest. Let me bring him up to the stream. Hi, Guillaume. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Guillaume is the head of product at Synthesia, a leading text-to-video startup. He started his PM career journey at Google in London, where he works on search for emerging markets. At the heart of his passion for product management is this constant drive to tinker with lines of codes and pixels, something he loves to share and discuss. Well, thank you so much, Guillaume, for joining us. Hopefully, we get to share some of your tinkering thoughts as you're building Synthesia, one of the cooler, generative AI products that I've seen in the market. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks. Excited to talk about Synthesia.
Awesome. Great. So as we preparing for your session earlier, I thought it would be a really cool idea to maybe start with a quick product demo, just kind of bring that capability live, since Synthesia is so much about video creation, images, and stuff. So would you say we start with a quick product tour?
Yeah, by all means. We have a great video for it. Why don't we watch it?
Awesome. Great. Let's add it to the stream. And let me play.
Hey, I'm Alex, and here's a quick Synthesia product demo. To begin, choose from a wide variety of fully customizable video templates. Then, select your preferred AI avatar. Now, type in text in over 120 languages.
And choose a narration style or local accent.
Next, start editing your video. Easily change colors to match your brand identity and upload your logo or other brand assets that you can reuse for future videos. Alternatively, you can choose from a library of millions of royalty-free media assets such as videos, images, icons, and more. Add your text and position everything easily thanks to the snapping function. And if you need, you can also add a soundtrack. Record quick videos of your screen with a built-in screen recorder, so you don't have to jump in between apps. Trim and crop your recording and adapt it to your scene. Animate elements by dropping markers in your script. It's an easy, satisfying, and super quick way to make your video look more professional. When you're ready, click Generate Video and include or exclude automatic closed captions. Share your video with your team to get feedback and add comments. If you need to make changes, simply edit your video, adjust it, and generate a new one in minutes. Finally, when your video is ready, you can download it, share it, or embed it. And that's it. Try it for yourself today. Ciao, ciao.
Wow. This was just so cool. I can't wait to dive in. There's so many things we can talk about with this product demo. So maybe we start from the beginning. Guillaume, I know that you joined maybe roughly around a year and a half, 2 years ago. Maybe you weren't at the beginning of time, but if you could just maybe do a quick sort of overview of what's the original story and what specific problems in the market that Synthesia was set out to address. I think that will give our audience a good overview of sort of the evolution journey of Synthesia.
Yeah, what a great question, because the story of Synthesia is not the most obvious one. So today there's a very clear sort of product market fit for the product, which is about solving video creation for an audience of people that don't really have the time or the resource to do this. And that's partly true of people working in learning and development in big corporation. Shooting a video takes months. It requires, actors, cameras, casting. It's super expensive. It takes forever. And we put this tool in the hand of people that are very familiar with PowerPoint, and all of a sudden they're creating videos with the speed and ease of using PowerPoint. And so that's really putting creative superpower in the hand of everybody. So that's the product market fit today, but it wasn't always like that. And what our founders set out to do when they created the company about 6 years ago was really, they saw a really cool tech, and they were like, how could we bring this to the market? And that cool tech was, effectively what today we call deepfake, the ability to take an existing footage and change the face of the actor. They were interested, they thought there was a potential for streamlining video creation, but they didn't know what the market would be. And they set out as their goal to figure out like how this technology could find a market, which most of the time in sort of entrepreneurship courses, you'll hear like, don't do that, like start with the problem. I still think, Synthesia is a good example of the type of company you can start in more of a deep tech space, where you start with a technology that's very forward-looking and try to figure out like how that technology will land in the economy. But so to tell you that journey in a few words, there were first few years of pure R&D development that were about pushing the technology to a point where it felt it could be useful. Along the ways, like the team did a few very good sort of, I would call them like PR stunts. Had a really cool thing done with the David Beckham and an NGO he worked with, a campaign against malaria, helping him create that video in multiple languages. That got a lot of press. Later on, they did something with Messi. That was the first thing that kind of resembled a product. So what you could do is have Messi, 1 minute video saying a customized message, which is a bit like Cameo, but very restricted to like one person, if you will. Also great buzz. And then a lot of sort of ad hoc engagement to get a bit of money, working with companies, trying to help them streamline video creation, but not in a way that was self-serve and therefore not scalable at all. The story really changed when the company managed to put the first version of Studio together. It was really bare bone. All you could do was just a text box, enter your script, a couple of avatars you could choose from, and then you get a video out. And that's when the product took off. Once it was fully self-serve, the user was in the command. And interestingly, usage took off, but the company didn't really know exactly where and when. And at that point, like 6 months to a year later, they did a big analysis, talked to a lot of customers, and tried to identify the pattern of like, who are the users we really landed with? And from that, they worked backwards that, okay, actually the problem we're solving is L&D professional in big corporations. That's what we're going after.
That's a really cool. I love how you review the evolution of, how it started with the deep tech. We often say, as you said, like, hey, we don't want to have the technology in search of a problem. But in this space, I think it justified the reverse because of such a new technology, right? I would love to hear, actually, you talk a little bit about, you mentioned the founders and the team talk to a lot of customers, right? And deep fake is such a new space, I bet like a couple years ago, the technology one is, mature, and you clearly can tell someone is fake. And now it's almost so mature that you can't really tell. So let's double down on some of the, the feedback and the implication of that. So I'd love to hear sort of like, what kind of feedback you receive from users and how that helped the team first find sort of the job to be done and the product market fit there, but also how it influenced kind of the product roadmap. And then maybe later on, we can touch upon a little bit on the ethical consideration for some of the technology. But let's start with like the feedback and how it influenced product roadmap.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to the feedback we receive and generally how we think about product management at Synthesia. One is like purely the tech itself, and then there's the product we're building around it. So in the tech itself, all the feedback we've received that has always been very much targeted towards like more realism. And I think, in the early days, like it was a lot about like the lip syncing, for example, people pushing us for better lip sync, more realism. Also, people insisting on the importance of the voice. Like you might think, okay, it's a video product, so it's only important like what I look like, what the avatar look like, but actually, it's the whole performance, and the whole performance that an actor, even a synthetic actor, gives you is a combination of the two. So aspects like, does the voice really match the body that I'm seeing, right? Like if there's a disconnect, like that doesn't make sense. There are things that are more subtle, like the spatial awareness of the voice. Like, does it feel like I'm talking very close to the mic? And that won't make sense if in the scene, like the avatar is sort of standing a bit like further from the screen. Like this is not what I would expect. Like the voice sounds like it does in a, say, podcast. So a lot of details like this to, I guess, get to a V1 of our avatars that felt really good and photorealistic. And today, like we keep seeing people pushing us, and I guess now maybe more towards like expressivity. So they're asking us to have avatars that can deliver emotion, again, both through the voice and their facial language, their body language. They ask us to work on the diversity of our avatars, to have something that perfectly match their use case. And I guess today we've managed to build a team. We have the resources to be able to tackle some of those challenges. Now, talking about the product itself now, like what was really clear from the early day, the way I described to you that basic product, is that it wasn't enough to solve like the full pain point of the people that we were building with. Like if you consider like the workflow, the environment in which they are, like ultimately they need to produce a video, and that video is not just going to be an avatar on screen and an abstract background. Like there's content to present, and that might mean videos, bullet points. They want to be able to put animation to make that lively, etc. So there were two routes at that point. Like we could have sort of doubled down on the tech and be like, that's all we do, then accept that our users then use other products to assemble the final videos. That's not the choice we made, because we think strategically it's much more valuable for our customers if they buy an end-to-end solution. So we decided to build a full like video creation suite around the tech. And that's where we get a ton of feedback around what people's workflow is. So the first step was building that sort of presenter-like UI that covers a lot of things I mentioned. But now we have more detailed conversation about, people also want to be able to collaborate. They want to be able to have approvals when they work with somebody else. Some of our users work on videos in multiple languages. So they want to be able to translate a master video, an English video, into multiple languages, then have native speakers from their company come in and maybe proofread the translation before the video is generated. So all those sort of use cases and how to integrate into the workflows of our customers is a big source of big source of ideas for the roadmap. And I have to say, in that respect, I feel like still haven't finished the V1 of the product. There are still a lot of like very obvious things I feel we need to build before we can say, okay, it's a full-fledged product for video creation in a corporate setup.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how it goes from a single point product, like mostly about video production, into sort of an end-to-end closed loop product. I do think that's the right path to go down, as later on we'll talk about some of the market positioning and defensibility. So I think that's an interesting choice that the company made. But I do very curious, actually, I want to ask this ethical consideration in two aspects. One sort of built on top of the feedback question from the previous discussion. Do you receive, how is the feedback different from both the L&D team who's producing those video to the recipient? Let's say I'm an audience and listening to an AI. I remember back in the early days of COVID, if I see, like, I try to play around with like this kind of technology, you'll feel like, oh, I still want to hear from a human. Like, did you get that feedback from the recipient end? And then what are some of the ethical consideration that the company needs to like sort of proactively address around sort of not kind of misuse this technology?
Yeah. So on the first point, in terms of like how the audience receive like synthetic videos, I felt like a big thing we cracked was that the output, I think, is outside of the uncanny valley, or at least like and that's why people buy the product, because the audience really value like the video they watch. Often, like, the alternative is not for them to see a video done with Synthesia versus seeing a video done by an actor. But do you want to see a video done by Synthesia, or get a Google Doc or get a PowerPoint? And in that respect, like, the answer is definitely like, I get a lot more out of a video with an avatar. It's more engaging, it's snappier, and I get the core message. Some of our customers, use it to create like personalized video, for example, for onboarding their employees. And the feedback we get there is it makes the company look modern. It makes them feel great that something so fancy was done just for them, etc. There's definitely a bit of a novelty factor that goes in our favor. But I would say that hump of like, are people comfortable with synthetic media in as far as we're concerned, is we're over it, I think. And the more this technology goes in the mainstream, the more widely accepted it's going to become. Now, you raised a super interesting question about the ethics of synthetic media. I think something at the core of our values is really showing that this technology will be used for good. And we want to make sure that's the case. The obvious pitfall is to create something that makes it so easy to create video that people abuse it for all kind of wrong use case. You can think of scams, misinformation, etc. That's why from the start, we had the idea of having moderation as part of the generation of video. And we have a team of moderators. We've iterated in the past 2 years over our policies and systems. And we have very few cases that get through. We're not perfect by all means, but we're pretty happy about how things are going so far. The other risk that we work on is impersonation, because we have like features for voice cloning, for creating your own avatar from a video sort of recording. So here we pay attention to securing the consent from the people that are going to be cloned, etc. It's a bit the same thing. No security is perfect, but so far we're able to provide that trust in our users that their likeness is well secured with us.
This is awesome to hear, some of the safety guards that you put in place in terms of content moderation. Well, folks, thanks for joining us so far. Please introduce yourself in the chat, where you are joining us from. And Guillaume is actually online, ready to respond to your comments. If you have any questions about Synthesia or his journey building Synthesia, or his journey leading to, to become a product builder in this world for generative AI technology. Guillaume, I before we talk about sort of the next set of question, I actually very curious. I'm sure a lot of our audience here are also. So Synthesia and a lot of the generative AI startups, especially in the sort of foundation and like infra layer, are heavily, deep tech focused. Synthesia sort of cover the end-to-end spectrum, right? From the building the model, the tech, and then now to the application layer. So in the early days, I'm sure a lot of the early employees were like research engineers. And then so you came in. Were you the first product hire? Tell us a little bit more about what your day-to-day like as the head of product at a fast, rapid growth, a generative AI startup.
Yeah, so I was the first PM hire. I would say in the times when I've been with the company, my role has evolved a lot, but I still look very fondly of my first year with the company. At the time, we didn't have. Oops, I lost the light. All right, it's back. At the time, we didn't have. So I was the first product manager. We didn't have design either, and so I was doing a lot of like very hands-on work. And I think what I mentioned about passion for building became really useful. It was not just about like writing PRDs and doing PowerPoints. It was effectively designing everything by myself, doing UX research by myself, even implementing sometimes some stuff. So I did a lot of prototyping, building a full end-to-end experience for how we could do creation of avatar from your browser, or what the voice cloning interface could be like, which was really the right thing to do to be able to iron out like the details of that experience. I guess the thing that it taught me beyond like, really connect with the work that say a designer peer or an engineer peer work they do, was really to realize that when you do everything by yourself, when you have everything in your control, you can move super fast. And that was sort of eye-opening for me. I remember my second week of the job, I had already like shipped a feature, not just taking a project that was ongoing and then passing it to the finish line, like really landing in the company, seeing a problem, being like, hey, we could solve it like this, mocking it up, working with the engineer, etc. And that had never happened in my career. And working it backwards, I was like, yeah, when the team working on a project is extremely small, when it's a team of one, you don't have overhead of coordination, you don't have the need to meet with somebody to explain to them the problem, etc., so that they can work with you on it. And that sort of ingrained in me that idea that it's better to work with like highly talented individuals that have a lot of breadth in terms of their skill set, rather than over specialize the team. That's why today at Synthesia, you can have a PM that design, you can have a designer that will write the product requirement document, and it will all better for it.
That's awesome. Later in the talk, we will double down on some of your personal reflections and lessons you learned, transition from a large company like the Googles to building Synthesia. So it's good to have that context. And again, folks, if you have any question for Guillaume, feel free to drop them in the chat. Let's talk a little bit about prioritization, since that's sort of a lot of times number one job for as a product manager, right? And especially in a field as dynamic as generative AI, and also some of the technology dependency, right? Like if we want the technology to go a certain way, how do you work with some of the research engineers? How do you know what's possible? How do you manage the timeline? How do you prioritize like feedback that you heard from customer? What's a good framework?
Yeah, I think there are very two sides to this question, and one is again like the avatar tech itself, and then the product itself. I would say on the product itself is more classical. I mentioned the V1, we're not done. There are a lot of obvious things to do. So here it's more classical prioritization. There are not a lot of unknowns. Like the technology we use are very well understood. And so it's much easier to do a cost benefit analysis of like, where should we start? Now, talking about the R&D, which I think is what you raised, there are two things that I think are important. One is you need to sort of bake in an assumption that things are just going to get better. A good example of that was the release of Stable Diffusion, about a year ago. When it came out, we immediately started to play with it and saw some cool application. Like, for example, we could use it to customize the clothes of our avatar. It was more of a proof of concept because there were a lot of things that didn't look good about it. But we had this intuition, like, obviously it's going to get better. It's just a start. Look at the speed at which, say, DALL-E or Midjourney are getting better. And, a year later, you have SDXL that looks amazing. And exactly as we hoped, sort of make the proof of concept now feasible for something that we implement in the product. So you just need to be comfortable with that and sort of trust that this sort of open source wave of tech is going to get better, that people like OpenAI will keep improving GPT, et cetera, et cetera. The cost is going to get cheaper, all of that. The other thing is, because of the tech is moving so fast and is very far from being mature, I think a common pitfall is to sort of over-engineer on the current tech. Like you might find a path to create that feature you want by spending 12 months sort of hiring edge cases and sort of hacking your way around the current technology. And by the time you're done, like there's a new wave of papers that show you that you could do this with just a lot of data and a black box model. And you just wasted 12 months of your roadmap, right? So what that means is that in so much uncertainty, like what do you optimize for? I think you optimize for foundational tech, like things that are going to be building blocks on top of which you're going to be able to build some more, if that makes sense. And you optimize for agility. You optimize for the ability to change course. And sometimes that means also doing a lot of investment to be able to turn out new projects like faster. So there's a lot of work that comes on our end on the speed at which we can train new model and push them into production, the infrastructure that supports the research team, etc.
Yeah, I think it's a very fascinating space, because even for prompt engineering, not for text to video, but just like, like a chatbot, I often find that, sometimes the underlying technologies keep changing, right? You're calling the API today, like the iteration speed is almost daily. Like even the same prompt could return a different answer tomorrow. So it's really hard to kind of like, like you said, like optimizing, I guess, for agility, right? Versus like trying to figure out, like prompt iteration is almost like a constant process. It's not a once and done and you can like rest, but you need to like just constantly play with it and kind of be comfortable with that pace of iteration and that sort of ambiguity in some of the outputs and unpredictability in the output. I wanted to actually double click on one aspect that you talk about earlier, around sort of the rapid change of the technology, and then some of the the open source versus closed source, like the API approach. Because right now, one of the things that talk a lot about, especially among venture capitalists, around like which company to invest, is this notion of like, can generative AI company build moats? Because I think there are other video creation tools, like Mid-Journey, for example, most notably, and Runway ML, and maybe even with Photoshop, Adobe, like traditional players coming into the scene. How is Synthesia thinking about differentiating from other AI-driven video creation tools? And, what is the unique value prop? Do you think it's important to build moats? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, of course it's important to build moats. I think what we have going for us is that we kind of invented that product category of like, this video creation tool in your browser that allow you to do very easily those sort of learning videos with a person speaking. We have a lot of sort of Me Too competitors, but we have 2 years of advance on them in terms both of product development and avatar technology. So what's core for us to maintain that edge is that our technology is proprietary, right? Like it's not built on open source technology. Everything is done in-house. We have a big research team, about 40 people, that are continuously developing like the next version of that tech. And I don't see that changing. And I think now with the funding we have, the size of the team we have a good chance of maintain that edge. And so that's what we want to do, right? Like that reference where people want the best tool to do like text to video, that Synthesia is the one company people think of. I think we're there. I think we need to be careful to stay there. Now, it's not just about the tech though. It's also about the solution we're building around it. I think the tech itself actually it'd be really hard to sell, right? Because like the people that have the most use for it are people that are completely non-technical. Like learning and development department don't have tech expertise, and they also don't have the budget to hire a bunch of developers to build a custom solution on top of an API. We understand super well their workflow, and we're building like a solution that works and that works for the enterprise. So it's one thing to have like a tool that allow you to do text to video yourself on your own. But when you want to do that in the context of the enterprise, there are tons of questions that crops up from the security of your solution, because they might put like, strategy information into your tool, to questions about the security of the avatar of the CEO they've created with the tool, which is extremely sensitive, to, hey, we're a team of 10 people and clearly creating a video is not just a single person job. So how do we work between a visual designer, a subject matter expert, and a video editor in terms of creating the video? So all that adds up to a lot of stuff that you need to build to make the tech actually useful. And so by now we have like a couple of years of product development behind us, like building a bunch of that stuff. And here it's a bit the same story of having the momentum to build the reference product in the market and having the resource to keep developing it, improving it. I think this is where we think we have a good shot at establishing like the reference product, and that's hard to catch up with.
Yeah, being the first mover, sort of the first mover advantage. I think looking into the future, where do you see this future of like a video content creation is heading? You mentioned it's still in the V1 of sort of the avatar creation. So what kind of advancement that you think is going to take place, and how is, I guess, Synthesia being still at the leading edge of some of this rapidly evolving technology?
Yeah. When I think about the video creation space, I think there's really a continuum of what kind of video we're talking about, right? And I think at one end, there's probably the video people create with our tool. They're not super sophisticated video, but they do the job they're created for. They're quite simple. At the other end of the spectrum, I would probably place like Hollywood movies, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars budget, years in the making, extremely high quality production value. I think that diversity is not going to go away, and that diversity will make the space for a lot of different tools to exist in the market. What's going to remain true though for us is that we're going to stay focused on like the simplicity and approachability of our tool. What we're focused on is improving the kind of video and the production quality that you can get out of a tool like ours. So some of axes that we're trying to work on is giving you avatars that are more expressive, that can maybe do more like gestures, move a bit around, maybe can be in some sort of environments. We want to give you control over things like the camera, so you can have those nice production effect where you switch from one camera angle to another, etc. Putting all that together, sometimes I'm like, okay, if a few years from now, if everything we dream of on the roadmap, maybe you could do a soap opera in the studio, something that's more constrained than a Hollywood movie. Ultimately, that's what the product is about, like giving creative superpower to everybody. And I think that's a sort of a direction that's going to stand the test of time. Like there's a lot for us to do in that respect.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because personally for me, I think I was telling with my my husband the other day, I was like, hey, I really want to create my own, a little movie, like a little short film, right? Like with this, I can really transform myself into an avatar and just kind of build a script and a little story around it. So this is really cool. We're coming almost to the end of our discussion, but Guillaume, I wanted to revisit earlier. You mentioned about sort of your responsibility, how you're jack of all trades, building, Synthesia, being the head of product at a rapid growth company, generative AI company. I just wanted to ask some sort of personal reflections on lessons learned, surprise insight, your proudest moment or your hardest moment, like what's kind of the key lessons learned that you want to share with people who are interested in learning about this space, or joining a company, follow your journey, joining a generative AI company? What's your top couple of lessons learned that you want to share with folks?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts, but maybe picking up where I left off at that other question. I think if you want to get into the space, the best thing I encourage you to do is to try to build hard skills. In my experience, this is what differentiates like great PMs from all the PMs, is your ability to go one step further into the complexity of the product the company is building. In my case, that was having skills about machine learning, so understanding the tech underlying the product and really interfacing well with the R&D department, being able to project myself with them in terms of, okay, that's what you're working on, being also able to read research papers, suggest things to them, not in terms of what they should do, but ask the right questions. Those people are doing this in such and such university. What about us? Like, could we do something like this? And then inspiring them by showing them, like, if you guys could crack this, like, this is what we could do in the product. And wouldn't it be amazing? So building expertise in that space, I think, is super important. And the way I've done this through my career is like just spending the time to either take courses or tinkering myself with the technology, building models, or just running open source models and figuring out what fun stuff you can do with it. This kind of experiments, POC you can do, go a long way in convincing people that you know what you're talking about, you are creative, you have imagination, and given the opportunity of working with amazing researchers, you'll know what to do with their work. I feel a good example of that, and something that you were asking me proudest moment at Synthesia, right? Like when Stable Diffusion came out, I mentioned we played with it. Like I was the one like just spinning up an instance on AWS and like running the model and figuring out like, hey, I figured out how to use Stable Diffusion to change the clothes of one of our avatar. I produced this super short video, like 10 seconds. One of our avatar, like she was wearing a shirt, and I just opened up the shirt, and you could see like a white shirt that had been like synthesized with the model. It was really not super impressive, but really a proof of concept, and enough to get sort of the team excited about what this could mean. And fast forward to 6 months later, and this becomes an important part of our roadmap and something we have a team working on. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I love to do, and I think that's the kind of stuff you want to love if you want to be a PM working in the Gen AI space.
Yeah, I love the sort of hands-on experimental approach to like you're just learning on the go and creating the first POC yourself, right? Like, proof of concept yourself. We talk mostly about some of the fun part of your hands-on sort of, one more thing I would like to point out is that a lot of people think of head of product as being someone who makes like high-level strategy. I really like your approach being hands-on and kind of bring it down to earth and like testing and showing the insight with the team. What have been the most challenging moment as you embark on this journey, and what are some lessons learned there? Anything surprising, anything like unobvious?
Well, I don't know if it's unobvious. I think like some of the most stressful thing is how quickly like the tech landscape like shifts, and constantly asking ourselves, okay, do we still have the right strategy, right? And I feel like we ask ourselves that question like every month, like literally, like new papers come out, and we're like, does that change everything? Thankfully, it doesn't change everything every month, but say in the past year, we took like a couple of like huge decisions based on the evolution of the tech landscape, and that in some way is I guess stressful, or like it's exciting at the same time, right? Because those things obviously are usually in the grand scheme of things like very positive, like new technology comes in and make you see a new future, but it requires to have like a very active mind, let's put it that way. I spend a lot of time just checking like new papers coming out, and discussing that with our leadership, with our researchers, etc.
That's good to know. I think we're coming up on time to wrap up our discussion. I wanted to leave the audience with maybe one final piece of advice from you, especially around resources. So earlier in our show, from some other speakers, people are mentioning, hey, there are a lot of people talking about AI these days. And then you mentioned how much you dug into the space, play around with the technology, read the research paper. What are some really trustworthy, resources that you tend to consume, the latest development, around this space? Because there are a lot of noise, a lot of hype. So how do you distill noise, like increase your signal to noise ratio where you can really read the true, developments and understanding what's going on versus all the hype that's happening? Any resources, any paper, any source of information that you would recommend for the audience?
Well, I think there's two levels to like the skills you might want to develop. Like one is foundational, and like I think you need a base level of understanding of what deep learning is, etc. In that respect, I would say you need to study. Like you cannot just read a blog post. So today there are a lot of resources. Myself in the past, I've used things like Coursera and Udacity. I think those are great resources, and that's going to take a bit of time. Like I think the course over there is going to take you 3 months or something. Definitely worth it. Once you have that base level of understanding, one person I follow on Twitter is called AK. He posts a lot of machine learning paper. If you're in the Gen AI space, like 70% of what he posts is gold. And I would say like I get a lot of information from that. Yeah, there are a few other people in the space that I work following. I'm really interested in whatever François Cholet, who's a researcher at Google, says. Jan LeCun is also something that I highly respect. Like, his opinions are always super enlightening. Overall, I would say try to stay away from the influencers, the people that are just, forwarding the thing and hyping up 10x. Try to go straight for the source, the researchers, the people that know what they're talking about. You'd get less noise, basically.
This is awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing a lot of the point of view and resources and going straight to the source. We will link some of those sources and thought leaders that you talk about in our event recap email. So folks, feel free to make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. Again, you can find the link in the event details tab. And Guillaume, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really quite an impressive journey, seeing how you both from the personal side and also for Synthesia, how the product's been involved over the years, and really good for us to learn sort of kind of the thought process behind and the struggle and the opportunities ahead. So thank you so much again for your time and for joining us. And thanks for everybody who's joining us live. Hope to see you in future episode. So thanks again, Guillaume.
Thanks for having me. Bye,
All
everybody.
right. Bye.